Welcome students, I'm Dr. Sonu Shiva, Associate Professor, Department of English, Government Dungur College, Bikaner. This session is for BA Second Year English Literature and this is from paper first. You have literary terms Inscape, Instress and Sprung Rhythm. I've taken all these terms together because these are somewhere related to Hopkins. So let's have a look what Inscape, Instress and Sprung Rhythm mean. To start with, Hopkins, you have in your course also poem by Hopkins, Spring and Fall. So he developed theories of natural essence, expressiveness and meter. So the way a person expresses oneself and in which meter it should be written. So these are the things which Hopkins himself developed, and he coined the terms, and coining the term means he himself framed these words like inscape, instressed and sprung rhythm to define them. So these three terms, they are framed by Hopkins himself. Definition of inscape. What does inscape mean? You need a little bit of focus to understand this. Inscape means it's an inner nature of a person, place or thing or event. Inner nature means when you understand that this thing is this, the thisness. How you can say that this is a tree or this is a hill or this is the voice of that person or this is the way a particular writer writes, because somewhere you know that there is an inner nature of every being, whether the being is person, place or thing or an event, that makes that constitutes the individual identity, that distinctive design, that special design with which it is made. So that is the inscape. So this is especially depicted in poetry or work of art. So you look at a painting and you say, oh, I think that this painting is made by this and this artist. How can you recognize that? So this is recognized due to that distinctive design, the distinctive pattern which every person has, that pattern of expressing oneself, and which constitutes its individual identity. But this identity is not static but dynamic. This identity keeps on changing with time. Each being in the universe selves, that is, enacts its identity. So every person or every place has something of its own self, and that person or that place or that thing enacts its identity. You find that this person is like, this is the thisness of that person, which makes that person or that place or the thing unique in itself. So when you call about that uniqueness or that definiteness or that distinctiveness, you call that thing as inscape of that person, place, thing or event. I hope it's clear. Let's see what actually he meant by design or pattern, that distinctive design or pattern. As melody is to the music. When you listen to any music, the melody is something which is inside it and you are able to recognize that. And the design in painting, so design or pattern, or Hopkins call it inscape. So whatever is the design or a pattern of something, Hopkins calls that design or pattern as inscape, is what he aims in poetry. So in the similar manner, poetry also has its own inscape. Every poet has a way of expressing oneself. Every poetry has its own pattern and design in which it's written. So this pattern or design which is there in the poetry is, you can say that it's the inscape of the poetry. And there's an example that countless forms of nature, all are unique, separately inscaped by God. God has given pattern and design to everything in nature that he has created, as I talked about hills and trees and everything. Each object in creation and the mind of each man too has its own inscape. So just as God created everything which came into his mind, he created pattern of this universe. In the same manner, when human beings create something, they have their own inscape also, which gives its own identity. He views separately according to his mood of awareness. So every person has his own inscape. The way that person is aware about certain things, he knows about certain things, he frames, he patterns that thing in his mind accordingly. Inscape, according to Hopkins, is the soul of art. So before creating anything, there is an inscape. There's a pattern in the mind, and you can say that any art has a soul, that is inscape in it, and inscape is the soul of art. The shape or inscape of a speech sound is more important for him than the logical content. How the thing is said, what is the pattern, what is the structure of any speech, that is more important to Hopkins than logical, the content which it is there. So how to place that content, everybody has its own way of representing something, own way of putting a pattern to something or designing or organizing something, and that is the inscape of that speech even. His adjectives such as dapple, dawn, drawn, or inversion of a word. So Hopkins also created these adjectives. This is his own coinage, or inversion of a word order. So sometimes in poetry you find that words are in the inverted form. Inversion means that the word which has to follow a certain word is coming prior to that particular word. Or omission of a relative pronoun. So these are the liberties that he often takes in his poems, are the ways in which he captures the inscape of the objects he depicts in his poem. So these are the ways, the pattern which he follows in his poetry to capture the inscape of whenever he wants to describe anything, whenever he wants to express something in his poem, he uses this pattern of expression. Let's look what instress is. Instress, you can say, is closely related to what inscape is. Recognition of inscape. How do you know that this is this? This recognition is instress. So the human being, the most highly self, the most individually distinctive being in the universe, recognizes the inscape of other beings. Suddenly you look at something and you say, okay, this is this. So that recognition, that thisness is inscape, and recognizing that thisness, when you recognize that this is the identity of this thing, that recognition is called as instress. In an act that Hopkins calls instress, realization of inscape. If you are able to understand pattern of something, if you are able to understand the structure of something, this feeling of understanding or realization is called as instress. The apprehension of an object in an intense thrust of energy towards it that enables one to realize specific distinctiveness. How do you realize that how this thing is unique in itself, is distinctive in itself, is different in itself? This realization of its distinctiveness, of its speciality, of its uniqueness is the instress which is there. If inscape is the body, instress is the soul which makes the body act the way it wishes. So inscape is the body, is something which is in a finished form, and instress is the soul. That means that realization of inscape. And this, you can say that he has said that inscape is the body and instress is the soul which makes the body act the way it wishes. Now coming to sprung rhythm, what sprung rhythm is. In my earlier sessions, I have talked about heroic couplet. I did talk about blank verse and free verse. If you try and reflect upon that, you will remember that heroic couplet is iambic pentameter lines. That means every foot is of 2 syllables each, and where the first syllable will be unstressed and the second one will be stressed. So that's a fixed pattern. But sprung rhythm is a technical innovation. It's something new which introduced by Hopkins. Sprung rhythm is the poetic rhythm intended to mimic the rhythm of the way people talk. So it is not a fixed pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables, but it is the rhythm of human speech, because we don't talk in a particular metrical style. So it does have a rhythm. Our English is a rhythm-based language, but it is not fixed in stresses. So Hopkins scrapped the idea of fixed quantities of syllable in a line. So in poetry of Hopkins, you don't find that every line has 10 syllables or 5 syllables. So he scrapped this idea. His lines can have any number of syllables, but he did not discard all form of an order. There is a form. That means every line is going to have the feet in every line is going to have one stressed syllable, but it can be accompanied with as many unstressed syllables, up to even 4 unstressed syllables per feet. So a line can be a 4 feet line or a 5 feet line. Every feet is going to have one stressed syllable, but it is not, the unstressed syllables are not fixed in number. It can have as many unstressed syllables. He adopted device of fixed number of stresses per line with a provision for additional stresses calling them outriding feet. So there he had a provision that every line is going to have, suppose let's say 4 syllable or 5 stress syllables per line, but he also had the provision that you can add one more stress syllable to every line, and this adding of more stress syllable is called as outriding feet. And this system is based on number of stress syllables per line, and a foot, or you can say the feet, can have up to 4 syllables. So it is not like this, that as in heroic couplet there is only 2 syllables per line. The first one is unstressed and the second one is stressed. Here every fit can have as up to 4 syllables. Meanwhile, the number of unstressed syllables per line can fluctuate. So this means that the number of stress syllables is going to remain more or less the same, with sometimes an outriding feet, but the number of unstressed syllables can fluctuate from line to line. Feet could be disyllabic or trisyllabic. That means that can be 2 syllables per feet, or 3 syllables per feet, or 4 syllables per feet. But a feet could be disyllabic or trisyllabic, but would vary little from line to line. It won't have a lot of variation that one line is only of 3 feet and the other is of 6 feet. The feet which is there in the poem, that can vary little from line to line. Moreover, the poem remains same. So what makes it sprung? The fact that those stressed syllables can pop up anywhere in the line. So there is no fixed place that after this number of unstressed syllable, a stressed syllable is going to come, as it happens in heroic couplet. Here what happens is that after any number of like 2 or 3, even up to 4, the stress syllable can appear. So that's why, because it can spring up, it can pop up anywhere in the line. Thus the rhythm of all except it's the rhythm of all except monotonous regular music. So if there is a monotonous regular music, only then there is a regular coming of stress syllables. Otherwise, in a normal speech or in the normal music, the stress syllables can vary. The length between stress syllables, or you can say the number of unstressed syllables coming with the stress syllables, can vary line to line. So that is sprung rhythm of Hopkins. Thank you. I hope you understood all these 3 terms: Inscape, instress, and sprung rhythm of Hopkins.